America, you are inside the square, brought to you by freedomsquare.com, where freedom lives. Make sure you've downloaded our app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. You can also register your business inside of the Freedom Chamber, being partnered by JC and Job Creators Network. Time to connect, time to start spending your dollars with those that believe in what you believe in. And inside the square at freedomsquare.com, inside the podcast venue, you will find this gentleman, Todd Huff, the Todd Huff Show. Todd, welcome to Inside the Square.
Chuck, it's great to be here, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. When did we meet? Down in Orlando at the NRB?
We did back in, that would have been May. Yeah, we were down there by chance.
Yes, sir.
We travel the country in our fifth wheels. We syndicate this program, and by the grace of God, our paths crossed down there. So it was good to meet you.
Absolutely. And walk us through who Todd Huff is. How did Todd get involved in a podcast, a radio show, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I was a political science student at Butler University back in the day. I was the lone.
Go Bulldogs.
That's right. Go Dogs is right. Conservative Christian. Plan was to go to law school, believe it or not, Chuck, and decided the world had too many attorneys, as it were. And so I graduated college not knowing what I was going to do, believe it or not. And I managed a standardbred horse farm. True story, 200-acre standardbred horse farm in a little town called Hall, Indiana. We raised race horses. I started listening to talk radio as I worked on that farm, thought this is what I want to do. And lo and behold, the dream was planted then, but it took me a long time. It took about 15 years from that point in time to get the opportunities lined up and for the timing to work out by the grace of God. And started podcasting in 15, took that show in a closet, by the way. And yes, we did have a coming out of the closet ceremony, but we had a podcast that we produced in our closet, took it to the local station here in Indy, Freedom 95. They started us at 2 a.m., got some traction, moved to morning drive. Now we're on in Indy, Dallas, Denver, Salt Lake, Knoxville, Tennessee, Red State Talk Radio Network, and now part of the Audio One Radio network as well. So that's kind of how we got started and where we're going.
Wow. Did you ever think you'd be where you're at? You believed it, but you never think, wow, I'm actually here.
It's funny because I remember when I asked my wife, Danielle, about starting the program, I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. What do you think? And I jokingly tell people that she thought it was something I was going to do on the weekends, and I was thinking a nationally syndicated talk radio show. But she did say yes, Chuck. So I think always in the back of my mind, I thought that that this was what I was, kind of my talents, I guess, are. But
sure,
you have a dream, you don't know, you do your best and see where the chips end up falling. So I would say in the back of my mind, I'd hoped for it, but it's never exactly how you envision it. So.
And radio's a grind, isn't it?
It is. I've got the face for radio, as you can see, but it's tough. I mean, there's a set number of hours available. There's some big names in the industry as well. There should be, and it's tough sometimes to get the opportunity. But our brand's a little bit different. We're conservative. In fact, I got the gear on today. Conservative, not bitter is our brand. I'm not a screamer. I was raised, believe it or not, at a Union Democrat household. And I'm of the opinion that 80% of this country would agree with 80% of the things I say on the program. Of course, Chuck, I'm shooting for 100% of the country to agree with 100%.
Right.
But nonetheless, I think that this country has had enough. I think the people with the biggest microphones represent the smallest number of people. I think the average American's had enough, and that is rank and file Democrats, conservative Republicans, libertarians. They know that these charlatans and these deceivers in the media and in politics are the problem. And I think that we have a lot more in common with each other than I think we realize sometimes.
Well, I always say common sense, common ground. There's a lot to play on, but it's the lunatic fringes that, as you just said, have the microphone, have the media, have the voice, and usually the loudest people in the room are probably the weakest. But unfortunately, they've got the pulpit.
They've got the pulpit. They've got the levers of power. In fact, we call it the 7 pillars of propaganda here. They've got control of the media. They've got control of woke business. They've got control of the government apparatus. And they use that against us. They amplify their voice. They silence ours. And suddenly people with common sense are looking around and they're thinking, man, nothing I'm being told makes sense. Everything that I was told was going to be bad under Trump was fine. And now what they promised to happen under Trump Didn't happen under him. Now the world's on fire under Biden. And I think a lot of people have figured it out. A lot of people are trying to figure it out. They're looking for truth. They're looking for someone to kind of, I think, put into words what's already running through their minds. And so I think that's where programs like ours come into play, because that's not what they get, as you well know, on the mainstream news services or just other platforms that the left is taking control of in this country today.
Correct. I mean, that was really the flashpoint on why we've built Freedom Square, because we wanted to be the high tide that rises the ships. We wanted to give, Todd Huff another lift, because your voice is important. We wanted to make sure that you knew who, another podcaster was, say, the counterculture mom, Tina, down in Texas. You should get to know her. We need to start working together, because strength in numbers. And that's why we built Freedom Square with our business network, our podcast network, our resources, our news, giving other providers another opportunity to reach out to those people. And got to get used to working together, get out of these silos. And I'm pretty sure you preach it from your pulpit every day on the Todd Huff Show. What are some of the things that people can expect when they log in, listen to you, or listen to a podcast they might find inside of Freedom Square?
Yeah. So, and thanks for what you do too. It's necessary. I want to say this before I answer your question, if I can. I think that you're right. We have to
Sure.
push in the right direction together. I think sometimes conservatives can be, especially people with an audience, can be a little territorial about it. And man, this is way too big for thinking like that. The founders signed the Declaration of Independence, and it said, we mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And we need a version of that today. We need a group of Americans, a core group that have said, we are in this battle. We are in this battle for the rest of our lives. I've already said on the program and other places too that this is not going away, no matter what happens in 2024. If Trump wins, Republicans win in a landslide, it's like winning the coin toss at a football game. We've got to play the game, and this game has a lot more than 4 quarters, Chuck. This is going to go on for the rest of our lives, the rest of our children's lives, the rest of our grandchildren's lives. Reagan said freedom was always one generation away from extinction. So it never really ends. We're always making sure that we have to pass that baton of liberty off to the next generation. And we've got to look at it like that. So I appreciate what you do and what you're saying there, because we do need to push in the same direction. So to answer your question about what we talk about and what we do on here, I think we're a little different. First of all, we're conservative, not bitter. I was telling you this off air. I don't do a lot of interviews. It's because we are a little bit different. We do some, maybe like literally a couple a year. But, my goal is to help people hear and receive truth. And it's not that I've got it all figured out, although, Chuck, I'm dangerously close. I'll tell you that. But it's not
You're
that I've got it
close.
all.
I've heard.
Yeah, it's scary how close we've gotten. But, the truth is, we know what happens when truth stops being proclaimed, right? We see what happens. That void is filled with lies, and we see the lies take the shape of everything from socialism is the way to Hamas is somehow a legitimate governing force to what's happening to our children in schools. I mean, it's all over the place, right? And so we've got to continue to speak the truth, and we've got to do it the right way. That's where the not bitter part comes in. I'm not a screamer. I mentioned my dad's a union Democrat. I don't think my dad's part of the problem. However, sometimes the people that my dad votes for contribute to that problem. And that's where we've got to, I think, get a little bit better. I believe in, actually, this is going to rock your socks off, Chuck, but I think that
Do it.
if you want to be persuasive, buckle up for this. If you want to persuade people, you've got to be persuasive. And we've got to get past this screaming in the echo chamber, wanting to get the most high fives from the people that already agree with us. And we've got to figure out a way to find those people that are single issue Democrat voters, of which there are plenty. They're conservative, limited government types in so many ways, but yet they vote Democrat because they're pro-choice or because they're a union member or whatever. And we've got to find a way to connect with those folks. It amazes me. The left is a conglomeration of people that have literally nothing in common. And conservatives, oftentimes, we almost have a litmus test. Well, that guy's 92% conservative, or that guy's 87%. Right. And we're ready to push him out of the circle. And I'm thinking,
and Todd, you brought up a great point. That's kind of what happened with the Tea Party. the Tea Party movement was kind of on that track. And all of a sudden it's like, well, you're a fraction of this, you're a fraction of that. Guys, we're Americans. We love freedom. Stop the infighting. But the other side of the fence, one track, one rail, one common message, boom, rolling over everything. You're spot on, Todd.
That's right. And we've got to get better at that. And part of that comes in the form of how do we communicate it? How do we build bridges? A lot of people hear that and they immediately think you're going to compromise principles. And I get it. We've had a lot of politicians that are way too quick to do that. I'm saying without compromising principles, if you can get past, if you got time for a story, I'll tell you this real quick.
We've got about 90 seconds.
All right. My first salesperson was a self-professed liberal Democrat. And she told me, she said, for the first few weeks, all she wanted to do was bash Trump. And I let her. This was back when Trump was president. And I let her do that. She started asking me what I thought eventually about certain issues. And it's amazing. Once we got past Trump's name, once we got past the labels, conservative, liberal, all this stuff, there was a tremendous amount of agreement. And she actually told me, she said, Todd, I could never vote for a conservative Republican, but I could support you. And I said, well, Shauna, I said, that's not true. You just know me, right? And I think that there's a lot more potential for stories like that out there if we would just be a little bit more focused on the end result instead of winning the individual fight right at the beginning. There's no need for that. We got to look at the long game here, the end game, and not get caught up in all this, squibbling and squabbling over things.
Conservative, not bitter. He's Todd Huff. You can find him at freedomsquare.com inside of the podcast venue. And Todd, where can people find you online real quick?
ToddHuffShow.com. We're on TikTok and Twitter, Facebook. Todd Huff Show is the handle on all those social media platforms.
Fantastic. Todd, thanks for being inside the square. And as I always say, without 2A, there is no 1A. God bless you, Todd, and for all that you do.
Thanks, brother.